Hello and welcome back to the channel on our continuing voyage to become better blues players. My name's Mark and we're now in the middle of a series of lessons around blues improvisation. And so I thought it'd be good at this point to tell you how I learned the entire fretboard. There's about 90 individual notes between this one down here and this one somewhere around here. And in order to improvise, you're going to need to find certain notes kind of quickly on the fretboard. So I'm going to teach you the method I used to learn the whole fretboard. I didn't sit there and memorize 90 notes. I have a system and I'm going to teach you what that system is so that you can easily find you wherever you are. You don't get lost, you find wherever you are, and if you need to find a particular note, you can find it really easy. Okay, so before starting this lesson, there's three things that you need to know. First of all, you need to know how to tune a guitar and the names of the open strings. So I assume you probably do that anyway. You need to be able to play all of your basic open chords, C, A, G, E, and D. And it would really help if you could play a B7 as well. And if you're an aspiring blues player, get familiar with that one. You're going to be using that particular chord an awful lot. So I assume you kind of already know those. And the other thing is your basic bar chords, this shape bar chord here. If you know that shape and move that around, so you know, for example, that this is a B, that's great. And this shape here as well, you know, this is a D, this is an E, this is an F. Okay, if you know those as well, those are the kind of the three prerequisites for this this particular lesson. Open strings and tuning the guitar, open chords, just your basic ones, and your basic bar chords. If you don't know those three things already, then actually this lesson's too advanced for you. Stop the video and basically go and learn those things and come back in 6 months' time when you know them, because actually it's more important that you know that stuff first. Okay. So now what I'll do is I'll teach you basically the method that I used based on those three facts, those three things you already know, how you can find your way around the entire fretboard. So you told me that you can already tune a guitar and you know the open strings, so you know E, A, G, B, and E. Okay, so you already know those. Interesting fact about the guitar, which you probably already know, is that this open strings here, this nut, those notes are duplicated at the 12th fret. So at the 12th fret, we've also got E, A, D, G, B, and E. Exactly the same notes, just happen to be an octave higher. Okay. So we already know some notes. Thinking now of our open chords, say a C like this. If you can already play that, you'd know that the lowest note on your open chord is the root note. It's the name of the chord. So when you play a C chord like this, the lowest note you play, that's a C. When you play an A chord like this, the lowest note you play, that's an A note. Well, we already knew that because we already know that this open string is an A. B, for example, we said about knowing that as a B7, the lowest note we play, second fret of the A string, that's a B. D, that note there, that's a D, which again we already knew because it's an open string. G, for example, lowest note is third fret of the low E string. That makes that a G. Okay, now a really kind of important thing to learn is where those root notes then occur in other places in the chord. So if we think of our C chord, for example, C has two root notes in it, two notes of C, one here and one up here. Those are the same notes, they're an octave apart, but they're the same note of C. Okay, so we know when we play a C chord, we've got this one here and this one here. Okay, and actually you should learn that. You probably already know this, but you should learn that for all of these chords. So G, for example, has 3 G notes in it. This one here, this one here, this one here. They are all a note of G. When we've got D, we've got 2, one on the D string, one on the B string. Play an E, we've got 3, one on top E, low E, and D string. They're all the notes of E. So if I want to find an E note in this area here, I think of my E chord and I can easily pull out this note here. Okay, and that's an E. Same with a D. I just think of the B string of a D chord and I'm playing a D note. Okay, so we know our chords of C, A, G, E and D. And you may have heard of something called a cage system, and you probably noticed that those are 5 chords, and you probably know that there's 5 notes in the pentatonic scale, and you may even know that there's 5 box positions of the pentatonic scale. If you've been following my channel, you've known that I've covered those and things. All of these things, it's no coincidence actually that these things are all interrelated, and so it will benefit your guitar playing journey if you learn where those notes are, because they're not only going to be beneficial for this particular exercise of figuring out all the notes on the fretboard, but actually those concepts then crop up when we talk about playing the cage system. They crop up in where the box positions and those kind of things. As I say, it's no coincidence, so the sooner you kind of learn those things, the better. That where you've got a open chord, learn where the root notes are in that chord. So C, as we said, 3rd fret A string and 1st fret B string. Okay, and remember, as I said before, what we have here is now mirrored up here. So if we can visualize this as being the nut of the guitar here, the 12th fret where the 2 dots are, if we can visualize that and we can see this shape of C here, and then we just transport that up there and we imagine we've got a nut here and where we're going to play our C chord here, we can then easily know where our root notes are. We've got one here, one here. Same with an E chord, that this is now an E note, because we think of our E shape chord, we put down here, and we know that this is an E note. Okay, so just based on the fact that we know our open strings, we know what happens at the 12th fret, and we know our open chords, and we're learning our where those root notes are in those chords, there's actually a whole bunch of notes here now that we already know, and we can then duplicate those up here. So I'll put a diagram on screen and show you kind of which notes you would know just simply by knowing the chords of C, A, G, E and D, and B if you happen to know that one as well, because that gives you this note here as a B. Okay, so just based on stuff we already know, we've covered quite a lot of ground. We already know stuff here, we already know stuff there. But where people tend to get lost on the fretboard is this area here. So that's what we're going to concentrate on next. Actually, before we jump up to there, one thing I forgot is the notes in between. So we know a bunch of notes in this area. What about the notes in between? Well, you should probably already know that if you've got 2 notes, say an A and a G here, an A here, there's a note in between them there. So what's that note? Well, it's got 2 names, and it depends how you think of it. Both are right and neither's wrong. It can be seen as an A flat, as in A but down 1. So you get to our A, go down 1, that's an A flat. Or it can be seen as a G sharp. So we have a G, open string, go up 1 fret, that's a G sharp. As I say, same note, same pitch, but known by 2 different names. Neither's wrong, both are correct. Interestingly, there's no gap between E and F, and there's no gap between B and C. So there's no such thing as a B sharp, for example, because you've got a B note and then you've got a C note straight away. So no such thing as a C flat. No such thing as an E sharp because it's an F. No such thing as an F flat because it's an E. Okay, so knowing that piece of information then, we can think about the gaps in between these notes, and we can figure out what they are quite easy. If we wanted to know, for example, what is the note 2nd fret of the B string? Well, I can think of, well, what notes do I know on the B string? Well, I can think of my C, and I know this is a C. Come up one, it's a C sharp. Or I can think of my D chord. I know this is a D note. Go down one, it's a D flat. Okay, so I can easily figure out what that note is, depending on whether I think I start on a C and go up or a D and go down. And that tells me where my F notes are as well, because I know where, for example, this is an open E. And I go up 1 fret and I get an F, because there's no E sharp. E sharp is F. So I can easily find out where my F note is here, simply by going, well, I know my E, go up 1 fret, we got an F. Okay, so based on all of that, I can then fill in all the gaps between here. So now I know every note on every string between the nut and the 3rd fret. And because I can visualize that at the 12th fret, I can see everything between the 12th fret and the 15th fret as well. So I've learned this piece and this piece. And as I said earlier, then we've got this bit, which tends to be a little bit more difficult. Okay, so the other thing I said that you needed to know when we started this lesson is your bar chords. So think of an A bar chord. And then just like I said with the open chords, the lowest note you play will be that note. So if an A bar chord is here, then this is an A. Okay, G bar chord. What's the lowest note? Here. That means that's a G. If I play my C bar chord up here, that's a C. So just by knowing that simple bar chord and being able to follow up the dots, so G, A, B, up onto C, and D, I already know all the whole notes on the low E string. Now, the top E string is exactly the same as the bottom E string. They're both E strings, they're both the same. So if I play this as a bar chord, I know this is an A, which means the corresponding fret on the top E string must also be an A. So I think to myself, okay, what's this note here? Well, think of where my C bar chord, my bar chord is. I know that's a C. That's a C down there, which means that this has to be a C up here as well. So just by knowing a couple of facts that these two strings are the same, bar chords, lowest note is the root note, you can kind of say, okay, well, we know all the notes on the low E string and the top E string. You can figure them out very quickly. And because of my sharp and flats and what I know about that, I can easily figure out the notes in between. So let's say somebody said play a G sharp. I think of my G bar chord and I go up one. That works. Okay, think of a B flat. Okay, well, where's my B? Go down one, we got a B flat, which means that this note here, that's a B flat, which means that this note here is a B flat as well. Okay, so we know all the notes on the top E, sorry, the top E string and the low E string. That's useful. Okay, good. I also said that this bar chord, which is basically the A shape, barred up. Okay, if you know all those bar chords, again, lowest note, which is now the A string, is the name of the chord. So we know this is a C, which means that this must be the note of C, which we kind of already knew because we knew of this chord here. Anyway, so what about this one? We know that's a D chord because we know our bar chords. So that means that's a D note. E. F, G. Okay, so based on that, we know all of the notes on the A string now, because we know our bar chords and we know our sharps and flats, so we know the ones in between. So we've already covered this area here, and we've now covered 3 of the 6 strings, the low E, the top E, and the A string. Okay, so interesting thing next is that the D string and the low E string kind of work as a pair. Okay, so if you get a diagonal, what I was doing there, you get a diagonal from your low E string and you go up 2 strings and across 2 frets, so you get a diagonal from, where are we here, 7th fret of the low E to the 9th fret of the D string. And in your mind, if you can see a diagonal between those things, those are the same note, which means that these are the same note. They're both an A, because we've got that, I can see that diagonal. So when I started learning this, that's literally how I would see it. I'd look at the fretboard and I'd imagine these diagonals. And because I already know what's going on my low E string, I can easily just figure out what's going on the D string, because I just see it as a diagonal from the low E. The other way you might think of this is if you play a bar chord, so I'm going to play a bar chord of A, whatever note your little finger sits on, that's the same note, that's an A. So this note here would be a G. And this one here would be a C. So very quickly, again, you can figure out what's going on the D string by knowing what's going on the low E and just thinking it's in parallel, it's just on a diagonal to it. Same thing happens between the A and the G string. So these 2 notes are the same. They're both an E, which I can figure out because of my E bar chord. So 7th fret of the A string, 9th fret of the G string, same note, they're both an E. So because I know my bar chords and what's going on the A string, I can then easily know what's going on the G string, because they work again in parallel. So let's take stock of where we are for a moment. We now know, or can easily figure out and find our way around every note on the low E string, the A string, the D string, the G string, and the top E string. And we know all the notes in this area and all the notes in that area there. And because we know how to tune a guitar, you probably know that these 2 notes are the same. We tune there, so the note at the 5th fret of the B string and the note at the top E, they're both an E. Okay, so actually the only part of the neck that we haven't learned, or we can't easily figure out, is this section that goes from 5th fret of the B string, which we know is an E, but from anything kind of above there until we get to this B note here. So we know this is an E and we know this is a B, but the ones in between, we haven't got a good system for figuring out. Well, I mean, we can say, okay, I know an F is an E but sharp one, so the note above E is going to be an F. So I know this, I can easily figure out that this is an F. And I know that if I take a B and take it down 1, I get a B flat. So I can kind of figure those out as well. But actually, this area here, this string, this B string, the B string is a bit of a problem child on the guitar. It just doesn't kind of fit the patterns of the other strings. It's just a peculiar thing. It's historic from the way guitars were made and tuned originally, and we've all kind of inherited that. And what that means is, actually this area here is pretty difficult to work with. And I don't have a system for that. I literally had to just learn it. So I could easily know my E and F chord, sorry, E and F notes, 5th and 6th on the B string, and I know B and B flat. And because I've worked in A so much, A minor pentatonic, I do know that this is an A note. And if you've been following this Learn to Improvise series I've been doing, you'll be very familiar with that as an A note, because that's the root note in box position 2 of A minor pentatonic. So we kind of know some little things in there already, but actually these notes in that area from about the 6th fret of the B string up to about the 11th fret of the B string, that's a difficult area. It's a difficult area to navigate, and I don't have an easy way of learning that. That is the one area where I literally just had to memorize, just learn them. So we've got, what have we got, 6 or 7 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 notes that we just have to try and commit to memory, which isn't a lot to ask for. When we started this, we said there's 90 notes from here to here. So only having to memorize 6, and everything else on there we can kind of figure out from stuff we already know. Now you're probably thinking, well, hang on, that's a lot when you're going to try and navigate your way around the neck. How you can't think that fast to think, oh, this note relates to that one there because it's of this bar chord, and that's related to this, so therefore, actually you'll pick that up really quickly. That's how I learned it, and actually it becomes second nature and becomes far easier than it sounds. You just need a little method, and you apply it and it works, and you get faster and faster at this. Okay, so we learn everything up here, and the only thing we have to commit to memory is these frets here, because they're our little problem child area. And as I said, everything from here to here is then just mirrored from here on up. So everything that we learn here, we can then figure out here, as long as we realize the 2 dots here represent the nut. So you will start to be able to see this as a G chord. Now, you'd never play that, but you can visualize it on the neck, because this is just like a mini version of what's going on here. So that's how I learned kind of this dusty end of the neck as well. Because I'd already learned down here, I can figure out up here pretty quickly as well. Okay, so what's the point of that? Why do we need to learn all of those notes? Well, the idea is that, and the reason I'm including it in this improvisation series is, up to now we've been talking about, all the examples have been playing in A minor pentatonic or A major pentatonic, or some combination of the two, but basically we're in the key of A. So what you do when you want to play in the key of C? Well, you basically move up and find the C note, and that becomes your new root note. So in the series so far, I've been talking about A minor pentatonic. This is the root note, and how we spend most of our time on the root note and dance around it, but spend most of our time there because that's the note that sounds most right, most in tune. Well, if we're going to play in the key of C, C is now our root note. So we want to quickly find the C note on the fretboard. Find our C minor pentatonic really quickly. Okay, we want to find that, know where our root notes are, and be able to dance around them. Because that's what we've been doing when we've been improvising in A. All we're simply doing is moving that to a different place, playing the same licks and things, but this idea of focusing on the root note. So you've got to be able to find your root note. So if somebody said, okay, we're going to play in G sharp, for example. Nobody ever does. Nobody plays in G sharp. But if you did, you go, okay, well, I need to find a G sharp note on my D string. I can figure that out because I can get my G chord, go up one fret. I know this is a G sharp. Okay, so now I've got my root note here. Oh, sorry, the root note here. Okay, and we can play licks because we know where our root note is. So that's why this is important, to find your root notes really quickly. That means you can then play in any key, because you dance around your root note using the minor pentatonic or major pentatonic if you want, and you reside and spend most of the time on the root note, and no matter what key you're in. Okay, so homework is to learn those go over that method so that you can know those those places on the fretboard, and then just set yourself some little tasks. Make sure that you can easily find all your root notes if you were going to play in the key of E, A, G, C, and D, because those are the 5 most common keys that you'll need to play in if you're a blues player. Except if you play with a jazz band or any kind of jazz musician, saxophonist, clarinet player, that kind of thing. They're a strange bunch. They like to play in B flat, and they sometimes like to play in F, but they usually like to play in B flat. So if you play with jazz musicians, be able to find all your B flat notes as well, your B flat root notes. But if you just play with, like, you know, regular musicians, blues players, guitar players, harmonica players, bass players, that kind of thing, E and A for blues is your most common keys. C, G, and D do crop up quite a lot as well. Other keys don't crop up so much. So homework is to be able to say, okay, if I was to play in the key of C, where's my C root note on the D string? Well, it's here. Where does that put my C minor pentatonic? Here. Box position 2, well, where's C on the B string? It's this one here. That means my box position 2 is here. Okay, and that's basically the point. That's why we want to know our notes all over the neck. We need an easy way of learning them, so that's what this has been, so that you can then play in any key. Hope this was useful. I will see you next time for the next lesson in this series of how to improvise blues. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.